Welcome to a very, very special, note how I didn't say special, I said special episode of the City Skylines Utopia. This is a special episode because of the fact that this is not normal. Neither am I, but that's a different story. The specialness of this episode is specifically dedicated to the industrial district for our city of Utopia, because we had, as you know, a dire need and demand for industrial, especially considering most of our commercial businesses were starting to get to a point where they simply couldn't get the goods that they needed in order to operate. So that was kind of awkward. Anyway, so I got to work actually during the last recording session, or rather I should say the recording session of the last episode that you would have seen, episode 5, which is building the historic township of Kerpete. If you haven't seen it, there's going to be a link in the top of the comments, or the pinned comment I should say, as well as the description to the series playlist, so you can catch up if on any episodes that you have not yet seen. Nevertheless, we solved it in that episode, or at least attempted to, and this is, of course, me building out that area. The irony here is the amount of one-ways I was using is kind of counter, in fact it's not kind of, it's 100% counter to how in real life I feel about one-ways. I feel like one-ways are entirely pointless roadways. It just doesn't make sense in 99% of contexts. However, in games like City Skylines, and I believe also in real life, there's very rare contexts where it makes perfect sense and actually works best, like, say, an airport. Or, in this case, a cargo area. A lot of industrial estates actually use one-ways pretty heavily in a lot of places in the world, and it works out really well. However, I think if I redid this, or I started a new city and I remember to do it, I think I would change this to where I would actually sever the connections to this industrial estate, and any industrial estates I make, from having any kind of direct connections to and from cities and residential areas, or any of the main roadways and networks of the main portions of the city. And I would just have it as its own kind of semi-isolated estate, where it might be directly connected to like a cargo terminal or whatever else via railways, but any vehicles that need to access it, including workers or, of course, trucks, would have to instead only use its own exclusive entrances and exits to and from freeway systems. That's probably how I would do it, because I think it would alleviate a lot of the traffic congestion and a lot of the other issues I'd have, and also to me, I would no longer have any need for one-way roads within an industrial district. So, I wasn't originally intending on making my industrial district be anything but just normal generic industries. But I ended up using the industrial district tool because I had forgotten that that is for unique industries. And so I said, screw it, and I went and made a unique industrial area, which is Cheddarball Forestry Estate. So you have a bunch of forestry to start. And of course now, as you can see, I am working on another unique industrial estate, which is Aliot Foods, because it is an agricultural estate. One thing I did not capture, because again I had forgotten to record originally when I did it, was a cargo rail line that I had set up in this whole area. And in fact, I actually built an entire large industrial estate south of this agricultural area and forestry area that has its own dedicated connections to the freeway system, which is where I actually put the cargo train station for the industrial estate within. I did not capture the installation of that new generic industrial estate on camera, however. So we have two unique industries, and we also have our generic industries as well, because we still had a sky-high demand later on for more industrial. So I eventually gave in and did that. Now, as you can see here, I did make the mistake, again, like I said, of not realizing that this doesn't work the way I thought it did. That is, the unique industries via industrial districts. I had thought that you could put normal generic industrial zoning in them, and what would happen is they fill in the gaps with generic industries that would actually be specific to said unique industry, whichever one it was. In this case, in the forestry estate, well, it would be forestry-based things. The agricultural one, you have things like silos and stuff. I'm assuming I learned that because of watching people who do a lot of modded series, because I see that is the case for a lot of these people who do it. So I'm assuming that must be via a mod. Well, obviously I learned that when I first built these estates. And you might be able to tell by now that I've also changed the layout of the roadways here in the forestry estate. Off on the left-hand side of the screen, you can actually see there's a lot less roadways, it's a lot less compact and tight-knit, there's a lot more space, and so there's a lot more room for, of course, a lot more of the unique industrial pieces to go in. And of course, being me, had to, of course, put a bus line in because, of course, I'm going to do that. I'm a big bus guy. I like big bus, and I cannot lie. Absolutely busting over here. So, yeah, I made sure I gave the potential workers, and of course, I guess it would just be workers, a bus line to commute to and from through the industrial estate, but also to and from the cargo terminal. As you can see, this is when I started to realize there is a major traffic congestion issue. And this is officially the final state, well, at least the current state, I should say, of the layout of our industrial district and estate. It's actually pretty sprawling and pretty dang big. It's a lot better than it was. We still have a fair congestion issue when it comes down to traffic, but it's not remotely as bad as it was. And I think it's namely because of the fact that I added this train line, which is actually directly connected between there and also down here, right here. It's also intertwined and connected, and so it's kind of spread out the traffic quite a bit. Plus, nothing necessarily has to go all the way over to Kerpete Island, because of the fact that Kerpete Island now has, of course, as you've already seen on the last episode, its own industrial estate as well, which means it's kind of a self-sustaining economy there. But this is good for the rest of the city. Also, you might notice there's a mess of a bunch more interchanges. You can see the two original, or the four originals here. But I needed to add a bunch more because, well, one, dedicated to this area, but two, add a bunch more because it just allowed them to get out in every possible direction and enter from every possible direction from different areas, so that way you don't have to have everything come to a overflowing pinch point. I also readjusted it to where most of the one-way roads are no longer one-ways. There's a few, obviously, as you can tell, they're still one-way, but I changed most of them to two-way roads because it made more sense to do. This is the final state of the city's industrial state, at least for now. It's all looking, I think, rather snazzy, actually. For industrial district and area, this area is actually looking pretty dang nice. How it started. This has gotten really, really good looking, I think. And it's far less messy. Although this is still a bit of a pain in the ass. Especially considering, buses are going to get stuck. I think this just looks really cool. Plus, you have this heavy forested region where some of the recycling plants are. before you eventually get into Hippie Bee Shores, which I think is fantastic. So there you go. That is the absolute state of our industrial district. Just a very different episode from what you would normally expect in this series, or from me, and a much shorter one at that. Just to cover something that I know at least a few people would like to know, how the heck did this get here, if I didn't put really anything there to show it, because I don't want to leave everything out. You know, I want to make sure that the bigger projects like this are actually covered, but at the same time, I don't want to put too much of the boring stuff in there either. That's more grindy, so thus why you get an episode like this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next official full episode of City Skylines Utopia, or CS Utopia.